We're so glad to have you all here with us this morning. So glad you all made it into the room without going head over heels. So I almost didn't, but fortunately I'm an incredible athlete, so I'm all right. So just ask any of the St. Norbert people. So I'm Tom Kunkel. I'm the president of St. Norbert College. Really want to welcome you again to the CEO Breakfast and Strategy Series for 2016 and 17. This is our 19th year, which is incredible to me, of being able to present the CEO Series along with our sponsors. And we're just really proud of it. Each year, we actually have more and more people who want to be here. And of course, that's a great credit to our lineup of speakers, including my friend Steve Schneider, whom we're going to be hearing from this morning. So we're just delighted that you could join us. This resource is being brought to you through the generosity of our presenting sponsor. That's WPS Health Insurance, Arise Health Plan. Our title sponsors are Wifley, Insight Publications, Johnson Bank, Johnson Insurance, and the sponsor of this session, our friends from Verhalen Commercial Interiors. Please take the folders at your place with you afterward and take some time to review the information. We appreciate it, and I know our sponsors will also. At this time, I'd like to ask my colleague, Father Sal Cuccia, who is Campus Minister Emeritus, to offer a word of grace. Sal?
God of creation and transformation, in your Son you made all things new. Inspire us by your creativity toward new beginnings. Help us to be open to new possibilities, to accept the challenges of new ways of using our gifts and talents for the service of others. With your hand to support us, all things are possible. Bless this food we are about to share. As we are nourished by it, may we be mindful of those who are in need and be strengthened in our commitment of service to them. We pray through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Sal. Enjoy your breakfast, and we'll be back with our program in a few minutes. Hope you enjoyed your breakfast. If you don't mind, we are so fortunate in our catering team and our wait staff. Most of the wait staff are students. And could you, how about a round of applause for the folks that work so hard? These are the folks who truly do put the hospitality and the Norbertine concept of radical hospitality. So thank you, guys and gals. Now it's a genuine pleasure for me to introduce today's speaker, Steve Schneider. Steve is the president and CEO of Hilbert Communications, a diversified communications holding company with subsidiaries throughout the state. Steve is also a longtime friend of St. Norbert College and the Norbertine Order, and he and I met shortly after I started in 2008, and we've been friends ever since, and I've just really appreciated his counsel and his support, and he's just a great guy. He founded his first subsidiary in Telegra in 2003, and by 2008, he had founded 7 communications-related companies. In 2008, he and his partners acquired FCC licenses and merged all 7 into Hilbert Communications. This company recently executed a 5-year extendable agreement with national telecommunications provider to build and operate 279 additional towers and wireless sites, in addition to the 81 wireless sites and 89 broadband sites that Hilbert currently operates. Prior to founding the Hilbert Company, Steve served in several capacities at Cellcom, including Vice President of Corporate Development and Vice President and General Manager. He is also the lead investor in various real estate groups that own the Bellin Building, downtown Green Bay, and the Kersher Building, also Green Bay, and the Zilke Building, a beautiful building in downtown Appleton. Steve is active in the downtown Kiwanis, the Green Bay Antiquarian Society, the Sarah Club, and he serves on the board of the Production Farm, a respite care and skills training facility for teen and aged-out foster children. As I said, Steve is a longtime friend of St. Norbert College, and part of that capacity, he He is the founding chair of the Schneider School Board of Visitors. It's a real pleasure for me to welcome Steve Schneider. Steve.
One of the oldest Norbertine abbeys in the world is Averbode. And Averbode has a gatehouse that is pictured up here to the right. And the motto going back to 1134 at Averbode is Festina lente, make haste slowly. Or put another way, hurry slowly. That's always been one of my favorite sayings. And I've been very blessed to have 3 mentors in my career who sort of epitomize that saying, not all in the same person. But I'd like to first reflect on 3 people who really greatly impacted what our businesses are and probably who I am. And 2 of those 3 people happened to be in this room. I didn't know they were going to be here necessarily. But one is Pat Reardon, who I worked for 11 years and has been friends for a long time. And we don't always agree on things, but one thing I learned from Pat taught me, is to be focused, think things through, and if it's a good deal today, it'll be a good deal tomorrow. And back when I was going to Pat for permission for things, that didn't always make sense to me. But several times since, I've said to Pat, I get it now. I'm a slow learner, but I get it now. When all these people are lined up outside your office saying, this has to happen today. Maybe it does, and maybe it doesn't. I'm grateful to Pat for everything he's taught me. The second person is Paul Gale, who taught me something totally different, which is, how fast can you build it? Build it now. How many can you build? And let's get moving. And just at breakfast this morning, Paul asked me several times, so how fast are we going to get these next 1,200? The next 350? And I'm very grateful to Paul because Paul has lit a fire under me to do things that I otherwise wouldn't perhaps have done. And the third mentor are my parents, who again are totally different, farmers. And basically work hard and adapt. If it's too dry for corn, we'll grow alfalfa. If nothing grows, we'll tap some maple trees next spring. Never get too upset about things because it'll work out and you'll figure out a way. Hurry slowly. My mentors have taught me to go quickly, but do it slowly. Be thoughtful. Don't make mistakes along the way. I think Tom sort of went through. I apologize to Tom for the long list of things, and we sort of had one thing that grew into another, and my initial topic for today was how accidents happen, which most of what we started was not planned. It was one thing grew into another, grew into another, grew into another. So after a very fun and gracious career with Cellcom, I started in Telegra primarily to do consulting, and Cellcom was one of my first clients, and I had several other clients, and all of a sudden some of the big 4 carriers came along with some needs, and so we started Bug Tussle. And then we needed a switch, and we started Midwest Data Corps, and then we had some opportunities to buy Spectrum, and we started Michigan Wireless, and we needed to build some towers, so we started a leasing company, Cloud One, and then we decided to build our own towers and started Red Tail Tower. All of that was sort of one thing led to another, led to another, led to another, which led to where we are today. Z-Bell Development, which a lot of people in Green Bay know me more for the Bellin building perhaps than for Hilbert Communications, because we really don't operate in the Green Bay area. Z-Bell Development is really sort of a menagerie of things that I got involved in again, by accident. The Bellin building was one of our first adventures, which was simply we happened to have an office in the building, and Bob Safford passed away, and Vicki came and said, why don't you buy the building? And we were having a board meeting at the time, and my board member said, yeah, let's buy the building. So we did. And then a year later, Vicki said, why don't you buy the Zilke building too? So we did. And then a couple years later, we took a look at a warehouse on the Fox River, and Todd and Paul and I walked out there, and Todd took the Pat Reardon approach and said, I don't know if we want to do this quite yet. And Paul said, make him an offer, give him 10 days, tell him it's cash, and get it done. And so we sort of went in between there. And so my mentors, one is always on each side of me, telling me which way to go, and hopefully festina lenta. And then the Daily Buzz was an operation that went out of business, and it happened to be in our building, and we didn't want a hole in our building, so Shazam, we're in the coffee shop business, which I knew absolutely nothing about. I don't even drink coffee, as you may have noticed, but we have a coffee shop, and it's done quite well. It's sort of the bellwether for how downtown Green Bay is doing. 7 or 8 years ago, we were doing $2,000 a month, that's all, but no one was downtown. Actually, it's been 10 years, I guess, already. And now it's doing quite well, and another residential building goes up downtown. Our sales go up, appropriately, so we've gone from $2,000 or $3,000 a month to $40,000 or $50,000 a month over that 10-year period, but it's been very stepped based on how downtown does. The Black and Tan was another business that was going away. One in Appleton closed, the one in De Pere closed. Greg DeClean told me the one in Green Bay was closing. We didn't want a hole in our building. We ended up buying it, and it's been a lot of fun. I have to say that the restaurant business is one of my favorite businesses, and Todd has told me, whatever business you're in, you have to have a restaurant. Those guys have the Hearthstone and Hilbert, and there are days where you just want to get rid of it because it's a pain, and there are days where it provides a lot of goodwill. So that's a little bit about who we are. Size-wise, in our Hilbert Communications operation and 2 separate employment entities, we have about 65 employees. That's going to be going up significantly based on some recent contracts that we signed. Some of that will be in Green Bay. A lot of that will actually be in our Deerfield operation, where we're building towers. Our Z-Bell operation has about 35 employees, so all combined, we're about 100 employees in our total, what I'm involved with. I'm going to be focused really on Hilbert. See a need, fill a need. See a need, fill a need has become our mantra, our vision. Basically, we serve what no one else wants to serve. There's 4 big carriers in our industry, and they have cracks. They have holes. If you have a cell phone, or if you have a cottage that you want broadband at, or you build a new home out in the country, you will find those cracks and holes real quickly. We fill in those holes. Sometimes with the big 4 kicking and screaming, saying, why would you need something in Monroe, Wisconsin? And I was really sort of excited to hear that the incoming president here at St. Norbert is from Monroe, which is a bug tussle community, which has very poor service. For a community of 11,000 people, there's 1 tower in the middle of town that serves all 11,000 people, and we're in the process of building 3 or 4 right on the outskirts to serve the whole community. So we find those holes in the community. In Wisconsin, a lot of those are in western and southern Wisconsin, and so that's where a lot of our construction is occurring. I want to first acknowledge some things that we learned along the way about how not to do things, and then I'll get to what we're doing and changes we've made along the way. Our first thing that we did was we went into the carrier business to be another AT&T, a small version of a Cellcom, and in a different area. And I would say that in the traditional textbook sense of economics, there are significant barriers to entry in this particular industry. And the biggest barrier to entry is the insatiable need for capital in this industry. And some of our board members that are here will tell you that other board members up front said, the thing about this industry is you will never have enough money to do everything you need to do. It just doesn't happen. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Bug Tussle Wireless or whether you're an AT&T. AT&T has had things on their build plan and they get removed and they get removed and they get removed, and it's a shortage of resources. So it doesn't matter where you are in the food chain, there just are never enough resources to do what people need done. And so what we've really done is we've picked a niche. We've picked that spot where we don't see a lot of competition in those white spaces. And that's not where we started. We really started with a broad brush, and we've really honed down to specifically where we need to be. The second barrier to entry is the market is limited to a spectrum capacity. And you hear a lot of things in the newspapers about spectrum auctions, and probably to most people that's just sort of an enigma out there as to something's going on with the FCC, and it's generating a lot of money for the federal government. There's currently an auction going on. I think it's up to $50 billion, and it has to get to $80 billion, and we're not in that auction. We were in the last auction that generated $45 billion in allocation of new spectrum. This is where you get a piece of paper in the mail that says, congratulations, you've spent $3 million, you can now start spending money. It is nothing more than a piece of paper that says you are authorized to spend money, as much money as you would like to spend, and in some cases, you're required to spend money to keep that piece of paper. But if you don't have that piece of paper, you're not in business. So it's very important. Our company has accumulated about 30 million megahertz pops of spectrum. That means 30 million people with 1 megahertz of spectrum. To give you an idea, that includes most of the state of South Dakota, most of southern Minnesota, western and southern Wisconsin, outside of the big cities of Milwaukee and Madison, northern Michigan, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Petoskey, Alpena, Michigan, and lower Michigan, and then some things up by International Falls, Minnesota, and places where people really don't want to go in northern Minnesota where it's really cold this time of year. The other thing is customers are limited to carriers who allow roaming. So you can build a site, and there are companies out there, there are individuals out there who built a site, built a tower, thought it was a good spot. We're going to invest in a tower. We're going to put some equipment on it, and why aren't we generating any revenue? Well, you have to have a relationship with another carrier that allows people who are selling handsets to use your tower. So having a tower and having the equipment doesn't guarantee that you're going to get revenue. So a lot of our industry is based on the politics of working with the big four carriers to make sure that they program their handsets so that when you go to a store at Bay Park Square or Fox River Mall, that those phones are using your network. So as Paul Gale will tell you, I spend a lot of time going to conferences, talking to people from the big four carriers, because to the extent that they like us and they like our coverage and they know who we are and they know where we are, that's what drives our revenue, and that drives how much revenue we get when we build a tower and when we have a cell site. The last thing is access to handsets is paramount, and that's what really drove us out of the carrier business. If you don't have access to iPhones today, you are not in the wireless business. And that really is something that became clear to us. And it doesn't matter if you're in Gratiot, Wisconsin, population 87 down on Highway 11. Those people go to Madison and they want the same services. Their kids want to iMessage. Those people want to FaceTime, and if you don't have those capabilities on your handsets, you just are not able to sell and compete in that market. So we got into the carrier business and we got out of the carrier business. It took us about 4 years to realize that we just weren't going to be. And at the end of the day, we had customers begging us to stay in, but it just wasn't enough to really cost justify staying in that particular market. We did some consulting, and that's where we really started with Intelligra, and we did quite well in the consulting arena. The problem is you teach your customers how to do it themselves, so they really don't need you, and I think that's a good sign of a consultant, in my opinion, is you sort of work your way out of what you need. Our customers either became successful and then sold out, or they became unsuccessful and sold out because they didn't want to wait for the time it took to implement the things that needed to be implemented, or they just got to the end of their investment cycle and said, you know, it's a family business and it's time to sell out, or we're a corporation and we've been in this for 30 years and the pricing is such that we want to sell out. So our consulting business, we sort of got out of. The tower business is something that we weren't in, and it really is our focus now. And one of the things that drove us into the tower business is 10, 12 years ago when we started, we signed a lot of leases where we were using other people's towers. And they had escalators in them of 2% per year, or 3%, or 5%. And that doesn't seem like a whole lot when you sign the lease. But if you're in the business 10 or 15 years later, what was $1,500 a month is now $4,000 a month or $5,000 a month, and it destroys the economic model. So about 6 years ago, we got into the construction business of building and leasing our own towers. The other thing I'll say is the tower business is the perfect Berkshire Hathaway model for those of you who followed what happened there, and where Berkshire Hathaway was a textile company, a very low multiple, partnered with an insurance side and became a much higher multiple business. And so the carrier business is much lower multiple and the tower business is very high multiple. And so what we really did was converted our resources and assets from a low multiple business into a high multiple business. So where we're at today and where we merged our lines of business and created strategic alliances, the carrier business, today we're partnering with all 4 of the big 4, some more so than others. Some are simply roaming on a voice network of ours, but 2 of the 4 we have long-term strategic agreements with. One, we just signed about a $160 million agreement to build a bunch of towers, to build a bunch of sites that they will eventually buy, and then they lease back space on our towers. So that is a lot more profitable for us than where we started out, where we were basically dependent on the roaming revenue, on the retail revenue coming off of the towers, whereas now we are dependent on the big 4 carriers using our towers. And once they provide service, it's tough to reduce your service area. You really look at expanding your service area. We've done pre-arrangements with them where they can buy the equipment. So in many cases, they may say, we don't know if there's enough traffic there. So, you know, based on our knowledge of the local market, we will put a site there knowing that we can find enough traffic in Monroe, Wisconsin to cost justify 3 towers. What that means is eventually the big 4 carriers are paying us a ton of money to use our site. And rather than overbuild us, which they've done in the past, we have a pre-arrangement where when it starts costing them too much to use our network, automatically it becomes their network. They write us a check for the equipment and they sign a long-term lease on our tower. So it really sort of protects us to make sure that we're not overbuilt by what could potentially be a competitor. And what we've really done is we've converted our competitors into partners. And we've done that consistently. We use a lot of local cost and local knowledge. So, a lot of towers are built by national contractors that come in from out of state. We're using the local electrician in Monroe. We're bringing, concrete in from Michaels, or we're bringing concrete in from local concrete vendors versus using national contracts. And that both keeps our costs low, and it really puts us in a good position when it comes to zoning for the towers, because the contractors in the local community will come and talk on our behalf, because they're going to get business out of this versus simply having another tower in their community. Our consulting and services business, we've really focused on doing a better job of servicing our own things. And one of the biggest mistakes I made early on was not putting in our own switch. And this is, again, where my mentors come in, because indelible in my mind is Pat Reardon saying to me, if you don't have your own switch, you're not in this business. And I made that mistake by thinking I could partner and not have our own switch. We needed our own switch. And there was, I should have listened to Pat a long time ago. And then Paul got frustrated with me one day and said, just buy a switch. Just do it tomorrow. Because Pat's right. You got to have your own switch. And so we did it. So we have our own switch, which was a major expenditure for a small company, about $6.5 million. Our switch is located in Madison, in the Park Bank building, right in coming into Madison. We do switching for some other folks at this point on a limited basis. We're gearing up sales to do more switching. AT&T will be connecting their switch to ours for some of the sites that we're building. So we have a lot of things going on with that switching facility, but that's been really one of our turning points. The other thing, and that's important about our business, is we're very ebb and flow. Again, festina lente, go fast, go slow, go fast, go slow. We'll build 200 sites, we'll sell 50, we'll build another 70, we'll sell 50. And so we go up, we have a great year, we go down a little because we're building again, we go up, we have a great year. And so that's something that's been very hard for financial institutions to follow. So a lot of what we've done has been private equity, and specifically community partners that we have. We've done some things with bonding with Fond du Lac and Adams counties, which are communities that came to us and said, we need broadband and we need it now. And in order to make that happen, we will help you with the cost of financing. So it becomes a bug tussle bond. It's called a conduit bond, but it's backed by the county, and then we pay them a fee for their guarantee. But it means that we get money at 2.5% or 3% interest, backed by the county, and it's public bonded money, and then that gets it's fixed rate 12-year money, which is difficult to get in other venues. So that's worked out extremely well for us. Our tower business has become our core business. So right now we have in our portfolio about 80 towers. We're building another 70 towers this year. We have contracts to build 279 for one of the big four carriers. We have the ability to add another 1,200 to that contract. So we continue to build towers. Bug Tussle is our own first carrier, and then very often one of the big four is a second carrier. So when we build a tower, we for sure have one tenant, and we typically have a second tenant lined up, and often a third tenant coming behind. So the economics of the tower business has been very good. The tower multiples have been in the 14 to 24 range, and we've divested of 2 groups of towers within the past 6 years in a partnership that we had. Our value proposition on towers is we build towers for about $205,000. We have 2 7-year leases signed up, that 1 or 2 which generate between $20,000 to $40,000 a year in operating cash flow. We're the first lease, and we provide access to the second lease. We typically do investor contributions where they pay for the tower. They get 100% of the operating cash flow until all of their money is back, and then we split what's left, and that's worked out very well. We have 3 partners in particular that we're working with on that. Pepper Tree Capital out of Pennsylvania, and a private investor in California that we're working with, and a local Menasha company that we're working with on some towers as well, and we continue to grow that program. They're able to realize somewhere between, depending on how well the tower grows, anywhere from a 10% annual return to 30% or up, depending again on how many tenants we get on the tower. So our economics are, we look to get 80 customers that are subscribing to our broadband service on a tower. And that's really not a lot. Even in the most rural of areas, you can typically find 80 people that want high-speed internet. So we're very picky in that respect. We want credit-worthy people. We want people who have good service that are close into our towers. And we've been able to maintain that. We always have sort of some that are 80 and over, and we've got some coming up. Our average across our company right now is close to 50, just because we keep adding a lot of new towers, and it takes about 2 years to ramp up to that 80. Roaming ranges from $250 a month to $8,000 a month, and we typically can sell the equipment if a carrier gets to the $8,000 a month end. It's not economical for them, so at that point they write us a check for $60,000 to $100,000 for the equipment and sign a lease on the tower, and we continue to get the tower lease and eventually sell the tower. Tom told me that he's going to give me a little sign, and it's up to that sign time, so I'm going to skip some details in here and get to what I think is really the heart of our operation here in closing. And the heart of our operation is really that as a small company, we've been dependent on partnering with other people. And so we really take very seriously our partners. I mentioned our tower groups that we work with. We have carrier partners that we work with. We have vendor partners, in some cases where, based on the towers we're building this year, we're doing steel contracts where we're able to get order a year's worth of steel at the point in time when the steel is at a lower price. So we've switched vendors there, where East Point and Nello are doing our steel fabricating for us down in Indiana, and they buy a year's worth of steel prefabricated, and we take it as we need it. We have some of our engineering firms, Raymaker and Edge, both out of Sauk City, Wisconsin, that do a lot of our surveying and our land acquisition side of things. We have infrastructure partners. Wisconsin Independent Networks is a large fiber provider. They are about to open a data center here in Green Bay, actually in one of our buildings. So they are probably the largest fiber provider in the state of Wisconsin out of Eau Claire, and again, increasing what they're doing. We're having some discussions with St. Norbert about connecting some creative things for entrepreneurship into that fiber connect network and Brown County's fiber network and so on. The Bellin building and Zilke building, one of the attractions about acquiring those, everybody thinks that I love historic buildings, and I do love historic buildings from Averboad to Bellin. But one of the really neat things is that they are high buildings that have become network hubs for us. So most of our microwave comes into those buildings. We have a route that we call Z to D, which runs from Camp Douglas, Wisconsin to the Zilke building, that carries traffic not just for ourselves but for other wireless carriers as well on a high capacity microwave system. Our community partners, I mentioned Fond du Lac and Adams County. We have deals with Sauk County, but we also, and I just mentioned the town of Franklin and Manitowoc County just as an example, but we're getting into more and more individual, where a township will say, the world forgot about the town of Franklin. We're out here and we have 1,400 residents, and our residents don't have broadband. And so since the 2010 population, our population has decreased by 15 or 20% because no one is living here because they can't get internet. And if you can't get internet, if you have good broadband, it's not a guarantee you'll have economic development. But if you don't have it, it guarantees that you won't have economic development. So more and more local communities are petitioning us, calling us. In the case of the town of Franklin, they got a payment for a substation, and they said, we want to take this $250,000. We want you to build a tower right in the middle of our town, and we want you to provide ubiquitous broadband for our town, because that's what we need in order to survive long term. So we have a lot of those types of discussions going on. Adams Columbia Electric Co-op at one point in time was the most unreliable electric supplier in the state of Wisconsin. They are now the most reliable electric provider in the state of Wisconsin. And recently there was an article in the local Adams Friendship News saying that that was due to bug tussle, because we co-located our towers at every one of their substations. So where they had no visibility to their substations, they now have total visibility, and they provide backup power and vice versa. And there's some neat things we're working on where those two can even mesh further in a rural electric grid environment. And so that's been a very valuable partnership. They also market for us. So you can buy Bug Tussle at their store. They send out bill flyers for Bug Tussle broadband. And Adams County is the second lowest per capita income in the state of Wisconsin. And again, we're sort of watching whether the access to broadband increases that per capita income. And already we're seeing more home-based businesses. We're seeing people able to work for Land's End out of their homes, where previously they didn't meet the minimum requirements to have a home-based business and work for other providers. And then our investment partners, who are our long-standing shareholders in our company, some of whom are here, Paul and Todd, and then we have a group from Minnesota, Bob Eddy and Albany Telephone and Communications Alternatives out of St. Cloud, Minnesota. And so myself and those folks listed up there make up about 75% of the ownership of our company. That is a little bit about us. It's a little bit about what we're doing. I'd like to open it up for questions. Harry?
Steve, how does a customer link to a tower?
What happens is the tower is broadcasting what's called a control channel. So basically the tower is always sending a signal saying, who's out there, who's out there, who's out there, in real lay terms. And your device, whether that's a phone or whether that's a broadband installation in your house, is always sending a signal back saying, who's able to give me service? And those two do a little handshake and they connect. And that used to be a very visual type of thing. If you remember the old 2400 baud modems, you'd hear boing, 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 and then you'd hear it connect. Okay, that boing, boing, boing hasn't gone away. It's just gotten a lot quieter and quicker. It used to take, roughly a minute to connect a 2400 baud modem. Now we count that in milliseconds. So roughly 6 milliseconds it takes to do a handoff. So you don't have time to hear that boing, 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 because it just happens. But basically, you're always looking. And then the devices are programmed as to who you can connect to. So just because we have a tower out there saying I'm here, if your device says, we don't like Steve Schneider, ignore Bug Tussle, that device will never attach to our tower. So that's why I go to all these trade conferences and shake hands with all the executives to make sure that they like us and they allow their handsets to use our network. It's also the price negotiation that goes on, because they want the best price for the minutes they buy, and more minutes become something that you trade in large buckets. It used to be $1 a minute to roam. Now we sell buckets of minutes to AT&T, where we say for $1,000 you get 50,000 gigabytes of data and so many minutes of voice. So does that answer?
Yep. Thank you.
Yep. Other questions? Karen?
And years ago when we had the fiber optic cables and Apple and all the mobile devices really, came to feed that volume, it was really software that enabled the higher volume to go, through and revolutionize 2G, 3G, 4G, all that good stuff that I know just a very teeny about. Is there any, kind of cool disruptive technology in
Yes.
the mobile and the towers and, that kind of stuff?
Yes, and I think, I mean, one of the things that, our investors always ask me about is satellite. And satellite, the problem is the physics of it. You just can't change physics. And people have tried, and they've tried in all different ways, but most of the advances have come in what we call compression technology, which is a software and a hardware-driven thing. And so, one of the real leaders in hardware right now is a company called NVIDIA. And for those of you who watch the stock markets, I bought NVIDIA stock at $20. I think that, since the beginning of last year, I think it's at $130 now or thereabouts. But NVIDIA is driving the self-driven cars. They're driving a lot of graphics hardware, and they are driving compression technology for fiber optics. And so basically you have the software that compresses things to allow a lot more ones and zeros. And it isn't as complicated as everyone thinks it is. It's really about taking ones and zeros and how fast can you make them go down a pipe and how fast can you put them together and take them apart to make sense of them. So NVIDIA is really those processors. It's also what's allowed a lot of digital printing to take place, and ultimately those things are meshing. And I just got back, excuse me, from the Consumer Electronics Show, and there was a lot of digital printers 3 or 4 years ago, and then it went down to next to none last year. And now it was huge again this year, even though nobody's talking about it. This year they're talking about ambient intelligence. However, the digital printing is really taking off right now because we're meshing the processing power with the ability to send large files that go to the digital printers and the affordability of the digital printers. So instead of shipping a plastic shelving to a fleet farm, you basically send a file and you have this big spool of plastic locally and it prints your shelves for you. You put it together, the instructions come to you over the internet, and nothing was shipped to your house. You don't have any of those shipping charges. It's probably a real threat to the shipping industry what's happening, but so there's a lot of cross function between those areas.
Yes. Steve, first of all, thank you for sharing your story with us. What strikes me is that your company is based upon technology, but it seems to be really based upon partnerships. Can you share with us some wisdom about what makes a good partnership?
I think that as a small company, it's tough to be the research entity that does the electronics to lead in the technology area. And so I think you always want to lead in something. And so I think what we lead in is the ability to bring disparate parties together that don't want to talk to each other, but they'll talk to us because we're not a threat to AT&T. We're not a threat to Deutsche Telekom. We're not a threat to Cellcom. Because we're this little carrier out there that does it. So we can bring those parties together and create a business plan that fills in their cracks. And that's really what we've done. The technology we want to be on top of, and we want to understand it, because in this business, again, festina lente, you hurry to get the technology in, and then you hurry to get it out to get the next technology in. And so often in rural areas in particular, you want to skip a few generations. You want to go from 2G to 5G, or certainly from 2G to 4G, because you can't afford to get the return because the technology is only lasting an average of 7 years. So you depreciate it over 7 years and it's gone. So, you're absolutely right. Our leadership is in partnerships and versus in technology. We want to be aware of technology, but we want to create those partnerships. One more, yep.
Just a question on the broadband technology. You mentioned satellite Harris. I remember the one that used to do the internet over satellite. Weather always got in the way. Yours is a wireless-based system as well. What has changed technologically that's kind of, especially in Wisconsin, gotten around the weather-based issues?
Yeah, we want to educate our customers on what the technology does, and weather is going to be an inhibitor. It is one of those things like physics that you're never going to get around. So if somebody tells you that a satellite dish isn't affected by a snowstorm, they're not being truthful with you. And so what we try to do is educate our customers to know what the pluses and minuses are of our technology versus others. And I think the trade-off between the mobility capability of wireless versus the fixed nature of fiber always means there's going to be a play for wireless, even if that means on occasion you have to disconnect. And really what's happening is through the buffering and the processes, if you disconnect in a snowstorm, the technology now reconnects you and you don't know what happened even. So absent live two-way video, and even that's buffered to some degree, you're really not seeing those little blips as much as you used to, particularly in the terrestrial system with that. But if you have a coniferous tree between, at a certain spectrum range, it's going to cause problems, no doubt about it. What we try to do is acquire spectrum that has longer waves, so it'll go around coniferous trees and around, lead-based buildings and all of those things. And I'll hang around if there's other questions, and thank you very much.
Steve, thanks for a terrific presentation. Fascinating story, important story, and the great crowd, I think, is testament to the great interest in it. So thank you for being here. And also, again, thank you for your friendship and your commitment to St. Norbert College. I want to thank all of you for coming. If you'd like a DVD of Steve's presentation this morning, please see Amy Sorensen, and Amy is right here, so we can take care of you. Also want to quickly introduce Angie. Are you still here? Angie Marshalik and Kevin Quinn, Dean of the Business School. Just want to remind you that since we last met, we did launch the Center for Exceptional Leadership, which is devoted to training your rising and your senior executives with world-class assessment and executive training. We're very excited about this. Tom Wilsius has been here to talk about that. So if you have questions about that or something you might be interested in, please see Angie or Kevin. They can tell you more about that. Our next CEO breakfast is coming up February 7th. We got quite a few coming in the spring, so we're looking forward to that. And this is going to be Mark Kaiser, whom I know a lot of you know. Mark is the CEO of Linquist Machine Corp., and he's going to speak on crucial conversations, creating an intentional culture. Again, that's going to be February 7th right here at St. Norbert College. So thank you for being here. I know you enjoyed it. I did too. How about another round for Steve? And go out and have a great day and be safe out there. Thank you.